Hello, this is a Fam Electric Ghost. We have Loben on the line.
Hello?
Hi, you can
Can
hear
you
me?
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Great then.
Okay, let me just start it off again. This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we interview indie artists from around the world. We have the artist Loben on the line. Where do you reside right now?
Hello, well, I am Loben. I'm from Slovenia, right on the border with Italy.
Cool. So we like to be able to talk to international artists. We've been talking to artists around the world since 2018. We've got over 24,000 listeners worldwide, and we welcome you to the show. So
Thank you.
thank
It's a
you.
pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. We were listening to your song Ghost, which we're going to talk about later, but we're going to get into all your music. And we usually start off with the questions that we sent you. So we're
hmm
going to go right into that. So, when did you first get into music? Like, what age did you get into getting in as a songwriter or just a musician?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was like 11 years old. And right from the very beginning, I knew that all I wanted was like to write my own music. So by the time I knew my first chords, I was already trying, to write some broken melodies, which were actually pretty bad, but it was a lot of fun for sure. So that was when I began.
Yeah, so you were given a guitar. Your parents got you the guitar, and then you just started. Did you take lessons, or you kind of taught yourself?
I tried to teach myself first, and then I got some lessons from a private teacher, which was like great because I was trying to learn from books, but it was basically not the same
Yeah.
at the time, because of my age.
So
And
yeah. So how long have you been working on music since that time?
I've been working all the time. It was like 20 years ago.
Wow. So
Yeah.
so you realized early. The next question is like when you realized you had a talent for music, and I have to ask this question about like when did you consider writing your own? Because a lot of artists they start, they're in a band or they play music and for school in a classical orchestra or some kind of like stage band, and then maybe they got into a cover band. But you right from the start, you're saying you wanted to write your own music, so that's interesting because sometimes people don't come to that until they're in their teens or early 20s.
Yeah, especially because it was like a bit different because of the environment, because I grew up in a very small village. There's very little people who play actually instruments and would like to play together here.
Oh, okay.
So I grew
Hey,
up basically alone in this musical environment, and all I had was like my parents' old records to learn from and to get inspiration from. So I tried, to start experimenting by myself.
so who were your influences and reference points? Like who did you listen to that really
Well,
drove what you like?
my parents were old rockers, so I started by listening to Black Sabbath, Rolling Stones, and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then with time, I started listening to the more extreme subgenres of metal, but it always started with rock and metal music.
That's interesting because I hear some kind of like Johnny Cash, like
Definitely, definitely.
in some of what you're doing. Though you in your write up, you talk more about the heavy metal and the rock, but I do hear that kind of Johnny Cash sound. As a singer songwriter, you have that kind of vibe.
Yeah, thank you. It's a big compliment for me because I love Johnny Cash and I love so many different genres of music. I mentioned rock and metal, but
Yeah.
I listen to basically everything from, post-punk to metal to country, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, as a musician myself, I'm a keyboardist, but I'm a real I'm heavily influenced by jazz, like bands like Sun Ra, Coltrane, Davis. But I like to listen to bands like Husker Du and The Clash, and Orange 9mm, Joy Division, and so I'm kind of all over the map. I'll listen to Funkadelic, but then I'll listen to like Jimi Hendrix or Led Zeppelin. So even though I'm a keyboard player, I've got this. I've always been a frustrated guitar player, and so
Great.
I always try to bring kind of like a guitar attack, like a Nine Inch Nails style of playing synths. Very aggressive synths rather than just
hmm
melodic. So I understand where you're coming from. It's like the way the world is today. A lot of artists are multi-genre, or they
Yeah,
cross genre, and they
true,
pull
true.
things, yeah, from a lot of different places. So your writing style, we're getting into that. Like, what would you call it? If somebody's going to label you as an artist, what genre would you tell like your record label or somebody who's trying to pitch you? What would you say your genre is?
Well, my genre is basically a mixture of dark wave, 60s rock, and neo folk.
Okay.
Most of the stuff I've done so far with my project Loben is like basically neo folk. But lately, and this will be more visible in my upcoming songs, I'm trying to incorporate more dark wave and synth wave elements. Just start experimenting a bit more with synthesizers. So yeah.
So when you experiment with synthesizers, because I'm a big synthesis, and the big argument in synthesis today is you've got people who love using like digital audio workstations, right, with soft synths and everything's like sample based, and then you got guys like me that are kind of like, oh, like I like my Hammond B3, I like my Mini Moog, I like my Prophet 5. I'm kind of a hardware guy. So you've got guys that, and then you got guys that will say, well, I'll do whatever fits the song. I'll use like a Mini Moog, but I won't be, I'll go out and I'll use like, Fruity Loops. I'll go out and grab samples. It doesn't matter, whatever services the song. So like when you get into synthesis, are you kind of coming from like using a digital audio workstation with plugins, or are you going to use like real hardware synths?
So I use the DAW for recording, of course, because I record multiple instruments like guitars, bass, synths, and everything. But I prefer hardware synths. Even if they are digital in nature, I still prefer hardware because of the hands-on approach. Yeah. And I also like to connect them to make those, multi-timbre kind of stuff. And I love hardware. I can't really deny it.
Well, that's interesting because guitar players always, I'm very interested when guitar players go into synthesis, because you see that result when you see like a guy like Pete Townsend is considered one of the world's best synthesizer players. And he's not a keyboardist by training. He's a guitar player. But the way he approached synthesis, he did very innovative stuff. The stuff that's on Who's Next, in terms of synthesis, very innovative stuff he did with the ARP 2600, with the famous synthesizer. He did all kinds of interesting things with envelope followers and, random voltage generators that other synthesists hadn't even, like Keith Emerson hadn't even done it. And so it's always interesting when somebody on a different instrument goes to another instrument and then they take their ability. And the cool thing about the hardware sense is that all those control surfaces are like, your whammy bar or being able to pitch bend. A synthesizer, when you use analog or digital, you have so many control surfaces that you can mold the sound in very unique ways. And so I appreciate that you appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, of course, I agree. You can even connect, the guitar. I do it many times. Like, you connect the guitar through the audio in of your analog synthesizer, and you experiment. You make everything possible. It's magic. I love it.
That's what Pete Townsend was doing. He actually, on the song "Who Are You," he took his guitar into the envelope follower on an ARP 2600, and you get this kind of interval up and down. People think that's just a synth, but it's actually him playing guitar notes into an ARP 2600 envelope follower, and then using a voltage generator to create this kind of segment. And that is something that he did on a bunch of Who songs, where he would take his guitar and then bring it into a synth, and then use like the real analog reverb, like they would use like spring reverbs, like actual real spring reverbs, not digital
from the tanks,
and then like envelope followers and voltage generators. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. So I'm always interested in artists that are kind of diving into that. So for your DAW, what type of DAW, which DAW do you use?
I use the simple vanilla Logic Pro 10.
That's cool.
And simply because, I grew accustomed to that. I've been using it for a long time, and I'm so used to it that it really fits my workflow, and I wouldn't change it,
What's your preferred audio interface?
I got a Focusrite Scarlett.
So you like that? That's working good for you.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So you do everything on your DAW and then you bring it to like a producer, or do you bring it to a studio, or do you do your own mastering and own production?
So for my synthesizer works, I do it at home. I record them, through the interface and everything. But for the vocals and guitars, it's stuff that requires a better treated room than I can have access to at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to do it in a professional studio.
Oh, so you'll bring your DAW tracks and give them to the recording engineer, and then do like your vocal tracks, in a
Yeah, yeah,
studio.
yeah,
So do you get
exactly.
everything done by a recording engineer, or do you take that and then do it in the DAW, or do you let the recording engineer master it?
It really depends, For some stuff I do it alone, and for some stuff we do it together. But the final mix down and the mastering is done by the engineer,
Mm-hmm.
simply because I really don't have access to a treated room at home, and
Yeah.
low end is really delicate, and I have a big presence in low end when I sing, so I don't want to screw it up. I have to
Oh
be
yeah.
careful.
Yeah. It's important. Like I've talked to a lot of bands lately just because of the lockdown. They're trying to find ways to, because of coronavirus, where they
Mhm.
haven't been able to get to the studio. So they're trying to, get the best, ambiance for their vocals, trying to build like a room for themselves and get the
Mm.
best mics and stuff. It's still hard because, there's an art to being a recording engineer, and there's an art and science to it. And as a
Yeah,
musician, we're artists in our own right, but recording engineers, you go back to the old albums in the 60s and the 70s, even the 80s, it makes a big difference. If you have a guy that they're artists in themselves, what they create.
definitely. I
Yeah,
totally agree.
yeah. So that's something that some people who do it themselves is like maybe have forgotten that that extra set of ears and hands on the board is a
For
whole,
sure.
yeah, it's a whole nother thing.
And even as an artist, you just really don't have enough time in your life to learn the practice of mastering and mixing properly
Right.
without being able to focus on both stuff at the same time. You have to concentrate on songwriting, maybe sound design and stuff like that. And for other stuff, it's really people that specialize in this. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't even dare to compare any kind of stuff I could do, mixing and mastering wise, to someone
Yeah.
that has a lot of experience in this.
Yeah, I've been farming my stuff out to engineers for a while. I do some stuff in my own original mixes, but a lot of stuff gets sent to the engineers. It's just what has to happen to get it out there.
Mhm.
So, do you play live in your local area, or do you go outside? Tour Europe. How far have you been able to take your music on the road?
Yes, so Loben is my own personal project, but I have a full band that accompanies me in live shows. And it consists of a drummer, another guitarist, I'm myself playing the guitar and singing, and another guy who's playing the bass and synthesizer. But of course, right now, because of the situation, and it has been really tough the last few months because we couldn't even meet for rehearsals.
Yeah, that's been the big problem. So, like some places they won't even let more than two people be in a room. I don't
Yeah.
know. Do you have that kind of rule? Because like some places like in Europe are saying, like, I talked to the guys in London, and they had a band, and they had a rule saying you can't have more than two people in a room. So they haven't been able to practice for months. Is
Well,
that the same kind of thing you guys got?
yeah. In the past few months, I mean, at the beginning of the outbreak in March, we had a really tough problem because we couldn't even, exit our homes because we were literally locked down
Yeah,
and couldn't meet anyone. And now it's progressively going, to be freed.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, we still have a problem. Like, if there are more than 50, I mean, there can't really be more than 50 people at a venue right now.
Yeah. It's hard to make the business to make money, I guess, at that level.
Definitely, definitely. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's been the big problem because I mean, luckily what I do is what I'm doing right now. I found a couple of years ago as a musician, as a working musician, you got to find other ways to make money. So I do like sync licensing. I do this podcast. So I was kind of in a good position when this happened. So I just ramped up doing more podcasts. I mean, I have another one at noon today, but
Mhm.
it's just as a musician, you have to find different ways to do it. There are these online concerts, but I don't know how lucrative they are. Most of them seem to like okay, well, you just put you out there, but you don't make any money. uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it gives you a chance to like maybe do like an unplugged show with a smaller version of your band, or you just come out with your acoustic guitar, or you do like a bedroom musician like me. You turn up, you do a Facebook Live or a Twitch, and you just do it from your bedroom, and it keeps you out there. It keeps your fans knowing that you're still alive. But yeah, have you found any way to get on board any of these online things going on?
Yeah, I had one like a small mini online concert, like at the at the very beginning of the breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of the lockdown. But it's the kind of online stuff. I think that for concerts, this kind of stuff is more suitable to live performances, because you get the energy from the musician, from the band, and everything. Which online, while it's really great for other kind of stuff, but maybe for this, I don't think it's the same.
Yeah, for a full rock band, I think it's hard. I think like hip hop guys that can use like a CDJ,
Yeah, yeah,
or a guy like me that has my big stack of keyboards, and I'm kind of a
yeah.
one man show. I can kind of do it. But still, what I'm missing is if I go to New York City and play, which I played in New York and Boston,
Mm-hmm.
I miss that crowd, that feedback from the crowd.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. If you're a musician and you're playing kind of like rock or progressive sound or like jazz, you feed off the audience, and it's hard.
Definitely,
Yeah, it's
definitely.
hard to get that feedback when you don't see anybody. You're just playing. Okay, well, I'm just gonna play my songs and I'm playing it, but you don't have any of that. So
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. And that was like the biggest problem I had when I was, doing this small online concert, was like that I was playing and I couldn't really get any feedback, because even it was delaying a bit because of the streaming stuff and everything. So I couldn't really know what the others were thinking,
yeah,
while you're playing live, you get the feedback from the crowd and everything. It's different if you're a
yeah,
rock
I think they
musician for
need to
sure.
find a way to kind of bring in at least like like if you could be able to put a monitor on your feed or something and see people
Yeah, yeah.
hitting the hearts or something. But that's not the same as hearing the audience.
Mm.
And maybe somebody comes up with an app for streaming for musicians that kind of gives you like maybe like fake laughter track. Like if people are hitting the like button, then you actually hear like a crowd.
Yeah, that would be a great
If you
idea,
did
actually.
that,
Yeah.
then it would give like the musician a little bit more indication that people are vibing or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
if you built that, I think there are. I just joined a collective that's going to start doing some booking. A booking agent's going to get me into some online venues. They're
Hmm.
supposed to get paid, and they're setting it up, but it's taking a little while to get the logistics of it set up. But yeah, I mean, we don't know how long we're going to be locked down, so we got to start looking into new things, new
Yeah,
technologies to get us going. But I was looking at your songs out there in Ghost. The song Ghost, like I said, it has
yeah.
this kind of Johnny Cash vibe,
Hmm.
and it had this it's like a dark pop song. It kind of reminds me like Evanescence kind of feel, the kind of goth rock thing, but it's also got that Cash kind of feel. So maybe talk about Ghost and how you that song came to be.
Yeah, sure. So Ghost was one of those songs I hadn't really planned, but we got into this lockdown and I was really, frustrated, like many of us, of course, because you couldn't go out and meet people, and with times like this, there also rises a lot of uncertainty. And I had a feeling that there were some kind of ghosts, uh, living in my mind and haunting me. And so I went there, I took my guitar and I recorded it straight off. And I think I finished it in maybe, I don't know, one day or a few hours. It was
Cool.
just a simple song. It was a few guitar tracks, a synth bass, and some programmed drumming, and that was it. And I recorded it all at home because I couldn't have access to the studio. So even the guitars I did at home and the vocals, unfortunately. But then I sent my track to the studio engineer, and he did the mastering by himself.
It's a really impressive track. I like it. I always like very sparse type of recording.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've always been into kind of atmospheric stuff, and I got the vibe on it. I like that. That's kind of like it. I grew up with college radio, which was
Hmm.
before alternative music, and listening to like the early new romantic bands like Joy Division,
Yeah, yeah,
in New Order and Depeche Mode, and that old new wave, new romantic. They was kind of post punk. Like you had
yeah,
this band, like the Talking Heads were a punk band, then they became a post punk band.
yeah. Or for
Joy,
example, the Damned.
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the Damned.
Oh yeah, that's a great band too.
Yeah,
Echo and a Bunny Man, all those kind of guys. But I was like really into this kind of merging of like punk kind of merged into new romantic, and you get the Duran Durans of the world and bands like that. But I always started with like bands like Yes and
hmm.
Genesis. Being a keyboard player, I'm into these 18-minute long solos. But
Oh,
yeah.
but sorry to interrupt you, but I was the same. Like many years ago, I just was really into shredding and Yngwie Malmsteen kind of stuff, stuff like that. So I
Or
understand.
Pink Floyd, yeah, or Pink Floyd when they had like a full side of an album, like a 20-minute song.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Early Pink Floyd, and then like David Gilmour and Roger Waters start saying, well, maybe we should start trying to write some pop songs, because like maybe all this psychedelic noodling is cool, but it really don't pay the rent.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, but even when they did like when they did an album, like Wish You Were Here, or they did The Wall. I mean, they still brought that progressive, like they were like Yes, but they became bigger than Yes. They
Hmm.
were the original progressive psychedelic band that learned how to take those psychedelic aspects and put them into songs that actually people could understand at a wider level.
Yeah, yeah. That it was
Which is
not only for musicians.
yeah. It was just
Yeah.
like they were able to translate their musicianship and do what Yes never really did. I mean, Yes always was still a very, very progressive band. They had their
Mm.
hits here and there, but they never reached the heights of like a Pink Floyd.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah. So I was looking at a lot of your songs, like Outcast, Bad Guy, Devil in Disguise, and Funeral of Our Love. Um,
Mhm.
so are you working on a full album? Is that what's coming this year?
Yeah, so first of all, I am about to release an EP with a new song that's coming out soon, and it's also very 60s inspired, and neo folk
Mm-hmm.
in genre. And we are about to film a new music video. And so, with the new music video, we will also release this EP, which will contain the new song as well as the remastered version of all my previous singles.
Oh, so all these songs I mentioned are going to be on it?
Yeah, yeah. And they're going to get remastered, so it's sounds totally different.
What's
And
the name? Do you have a name for the project?
yeah, the project is Keep Your Faith.
Cool. So what's the target date for that?
Excuse me?
What's the target release date?
The target release date is, we don't have a precise release date, but it will be in the beginning of September.
Cool. We'll be looking forward to that.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's awesome. Because so how do you get your music videos done in this kind of situation with Corona? Are you working with somebody like a film director, or are you doing it yourself?
Yeah, I have the luck that my label is in contact with a film director, and he's one of kind of guy that really listens to what you have to say. So I'm happy because he is able to capture like the soul of my songs. And yeah, fortunately enough, we can meet now, and for filming videos and everything, it's allowed. It just you have to be less than 50 people. So,
Oh,
but
cool. So you're actually going to go out and film the band?
yeah.
So it's not going to be like I could imagine in this lockdown situation, like in America, we're going to have a problem. It's getting worse instead of better. And so like I'm working with some people, and it's kind of like where your old MTV days where you'd send somebody, a film director, your song, and they kind of interpret what they think it should be. And
Yeah, yeah,
you might not even be in it. They just go and
definitely.
they splice stuff together, or they whatever they feel the song is, and you kind of like, okay, well, I'm gonna trust this guy. I mean, I look at
Mm.
their work and then like, oh, I'm gonna trust them, and I'm gonna let them do it.
Yeah.
But that's a different type of video. And I said, well, I had to do that because I'm working with the Swedish record label, and they're gonna do something for one of my songs coming out. But yeah, I can't get to Sweden right now because Americans are kind of locked out.
Mm. Yeah.
We can't go to the EU anymore.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, we got our own problems. But so I'm saying, okay, well, we're gonna have to trust this guy to do whatever he's gonna do. But have you ever worked with anybody that like didn't even have your band in the film? You're just like going to let them interpret your music and do their own thing, or do you want to have videos always kind of have your band in the film?
No, for my videos, I've been always working with this guy. I mean, for previous projects, I mean, I produced for other bands in several different genres, and I know that sometimes, it happens that, people either weren't in the video or it was like really totally unconnected with the whole feeling of the song. But
Mm-hmm.
fortunately enough, I found this guy and I'm sticking to him because I think it's kind of rare to get someone that actually listens to you. It's like going
Well,
to
that's
the
cool, man.
hairdresser.
It's great to have a relationship with somebody who's going to do the visuals, and you're
Yeah,
able to have a consistent relationship, and then you
yeah,
get a consistent brand image for your band. So
exactly. Yeah,
that's important when you're a band to kind of craft that image so that
yeah,
people know what it is, and then you kind
and
of go from there.
yeah, and especially nowadays, I think that kind of stuff is really important because as some I don't know, some decades ago, you were still able to sell music. Nowadays, you got to sell the whole package. I mean, the whole product, and it's not only the music; it's also the image and everything. So videos are really important, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's something. Yeah, it's the whole idea of being a musician is what do you do to survive? Do you go and like do features where you go work with other musicians? Do you like farm yourself out to do like studio work? Do you go and like get requests and you do like guitar work on somebody else's album or bass work
Hmm.
on somebody else's album just so that you can still be out there? So what
Hmm.
have you done that? You say you worked with other bands. So do you actually work with other projects and do that to keep yourself like busy?
Yeah, I've produced like basis and synth parts for other bands.
Yeah.
So and also arrange some tracks, because some people come with an idea, but sometimes it's not really well, perfectly arranged,
Mm-hmm.
or it's maybe you got to help them get, that kind of bits of interest into their tracks and stuff like that. And I really enjoy it, because I got all sorts of other musicians that come from different backgrounds, and I think it's really important for at least for me, because every time I work with someone that is very active in a different genre, they they infuse me with inspiration because it's something I've never done before, and it makes me think in another way.
Yeah, I think that's
Because,
what's great about music, man. That's why I do this podcast because I've talked to like 40 musicians in the last 2 years,
hmm
multiple genres. And then after talking to some of them, I actually went and collaborated with this lady in Los Angeles who was actually an actor,
hmm
but she had an electronic music project, and she's deep into like FL Studio. That's what she is. Right? She's a DAW recorder, but
hmm
I'm a hardware guy, and so we kind of mixed our interest, and we were able to do a collaboration where I've been kind of critical of EDM and trance in that it didn't, I didn't think they had like full song structures. I'm
hmm
more of a song guy. I like, the Beatles and like Pink Floyd. I want somebody actually saying something, not just a beat. Um,
hmm
and so I was able to kind of cross into her world where she was trying to branch into, well, I want to make EDM that actually says something. I want to make EDM that actually are songs. It's more
yeah, yeah,
like synthwave. So we were able to
yeah.
collaborate and bring those kind of two worlds together on a 2017 project. And it
Hmm.
was all, pre-coronavirus, but we did it totally on the net. We just
Hmm.
did Skype. We did, Google Drive transfers and data, and then we sent this stuff to get mastered. But everything was like a meeting online.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and we were
Which
able
is
to,
great. I mean, technology nowadays allows for really awesome stuff.
yeah, you're surprised who you can work with. I mean, you can end up working with a band in Berlin. You can work with a band in Toronto, or a guy in Tokyo.
Yeah.
You can just like go bouncing back and forth. And so, like, I think people are, there's limitations because of the lockdown, but there are also a lot of things that you would never have thought you could do.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and that's something that I think that this kind of situation about the lockdown and everything will change is like the collaboration between the artists, because when not some time ago we all knew that this was possible. I mean, that to collaborate with people from everywhere, but we weren't so used to it. But I think with
yeah,
this kind of situation we got more used to it and more into it, and that this will become more like second nature to us as opposed to before.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they create like some of the DAWs, right? Like Logic or FL Studio or any of the big tool sets decide to actually make workable online collaboration within the tool.
That would be awesome, yeah.
Because if they would take advantage of the technologies like 5G and high-speed internet, you possibly could, if you can play with the the lag time, have it so that you could collaborate in real time like you're in a studio.
Definitely.
And so if you could do that where you're actually playing with a drummer, you're playing with a bass player, but they're actually in their own studio.
Yeah.
And somehow you can actually do that level of collaboration while you're doing the tracks. I think that would be very innovative and something I've been like proposing to people for a while. I've been talking to people, but the technology has been kind of, in terms of the lag time, has been the issue. But I think we're going to get to a world, where lag time is even more of a problem now because of Corona, because everybody's online.
Yeah. At least this kind of situation brought this kind of stuff, to everyone,
Yeah. Hopefully we'll see something within the next 2 years. I think it's going to get closer to that. I think we're going to see more.
Yeah. Let's hope so.
So what do you think about the future of music and streaming services and how we musicians make money? Because we're in this lockdown situation, most of the bands I was talking to for the last 2 years, they made the majority of their money by being on the road. That their music on the streaming services really doesn't give them a good income stream. That they sell more T-shirts, they sell more physical CDs at a show than they make more money doing that than they do off of their Spotify.
I can totally relate,
Yeah, so now we're in this situation. So what are your opinions on like what do artists need to do to kind of work with the media, outlets that get our music to the fans? Do we need to try to renegotiate how things are done so that we can get a living wage?
So yeah, I think that these streaming services are kind of like a two-sided blade, because from one side they pay very little. Let's be honest, they pay very little, and on the other side, though, they give a voice even to smaller artists. And sometimes some time ago when you were a really small artist, you couldn't get it to get your song on the radio because it was heavily redacted, and it was difficult for you if you were unsigned, to get on the radio and everything. But with stuff like Spotify, I think it gives a chance even to smaller artists and maybe more niche kind of genres to get visible and to get some kind of public for themselves as well,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think I started on SoundCloud, and then from SoundCloud I got approached by some podcasting companies, and I've been podcasting for like 4 years. I was on one company called Spearman, but they went away, and then I got picked up by Anchor, and Anchor is actually part of Spotify. And it's just interesting that my SoundCloud following generated me getting onto Spotify, and then now I'm on Spotify with the Ghost and all this stuff, and I'm on this podcast, and it's just that's where I found like the podcast actually makes more money than my music.
That's the sad truth nowadays.
But that's just the nature of the way the business is. But I use the podcast to kind of push my music, and then it does make my numbers go up compared to what they were. So without the podcast, my other numbers wouldn't be so good. So what it seems like musicians have to do, like sync licensing, they have to do, collaborations, they have to do features, they have to do merch.
For sure.
They have to do so many different things that then they can't get that audience that now, the kids will buy a $60 Xbox game, but they won't pay $9 for a CD. And so that's what can we get into video game industry and get our songs into these video games? And that's why I was talking to some artists, and it's like the next big thing is like trying to get your song into Grand Theft Auto, trying to get your song into the next big video game. They actually pay more. If you get your song placed in a video game, you will actually make more money. It's like getting into a film or a TV show. So does the artist have to be like willing to say, well, I don't know if I want to sell out, but the fact is like that's where things are going. If you can get your content into new media,
Yeah,
which includes like video games, TV shows, advertising,
yeah,
films, short films, that's where you can actually thrive. You could do better than you would think. And it
definitely.
seems, yeah, some bands might not be against it because the way the genre that they're in, but I think every band needs to look at it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I totally agree.
So
And I'm sorry for interrupting you.
yeah,
I mean, I was just saying that there's always people who are going to point their finger at you and tell you you are a sellout. But in the end, if your goal is making music, who the hell cares?
well, I can get my music, out there, whether it's in one format or another. You're
Mm,
still getting it out. I think all musicians want to get heard, and if you can get your
exactly.
music into a
Yeah.
wider audience, it's like depends on what you call selling out. But it's just a matter of if I can still fund my 20-minute progressive song on,
Mhm.
on SoundCloud, and then I have a song that's more commercial on Spotify. It's like if I can still fund my more experimental projects, I'm happy because like
Exactly.
one
I totally
one
agree.
yeah, one set of fans will like my more mainstream stuff, and another set of fans like my more like indie progressive stuff, and so they go where my fans go wherever they want to go, and
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
serve your entire audience, and you have micro audiences that
yeah,
might be into some part of what you do and into another thing that you do.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think I've been asking how people are handling Corona, but we've been kind of talking about it the whole time.
Yeah.
So you kind of doubled down on recording and making new songs. You released Ghost. You're working on your new EP. You're
Yeah, and
working
I'm
on
also working on new stuff, like new music. And as I said, it's going to be slightly more, dark wave and synth wave oriented. Yeah, that's it.
So you find that because you're not on the road, that you're able to do things that maybe you would have not been able to do. Because a lot of musicians, like if they're working musicians, they're the summer they're like tied up in back to back concerts, and so they really can't spend a lot of time like learning something new. Like if they wanted to learn how to integrate synths into their stuff, or they want to integrate samples in their stuff, they'd have to wait till they're off the road. You know, so you
Yeah,
find
it's
having more time to dive into things that maybe you wouldn't have been able to.
no, it's a bit different for me because while I like playing live and I love concerts, I still prefer to have maybe a bit less concerts and a bit more studio work. I'm
Well,
very studio oriented and I love experimenting with this kind of stuff.
that's cool because a lot of bands, the way it is, like at least in the States, they spend their whole most of their career, I was like 70-80% of their time on the road,
Yeah,
in order to justify being 100% into music.
yeah. Mm.
Um, and so then their recording time, they'll record on the road. They'll bring they'll bring some tools so they can record stuff on the road, but they can't really dive into a lot,
Yeah,
until they
yeah.
get back home because they're on the bus.
Yeah, it's a different environment for sure.
Yeah, so it's like so it's interesting. So you've already put your work online. Are you thinking of trying to push online in a bigger way in 2020, 2021 than what you may have done before? Are you trying to do
Uh,
more outlets, more things online?
I've been, working on this kind of online promotion stuff for quite a bit, and I think that for this, especially at this moment that we live in right now, it's the most important stuff. So I'm going to keep focusing on that.
So is the video you think the biggest thing as an artist? And like what we do as musicians is really audio oriented. Everything's into the sound.
Mhm.
Yeah, but in order to reach people, we have to get into the visuals, and like you're working with a video director that you like.
Yeah,
So it seems like are you thinking that you've got to put more into video
I
or to
think
put the same amount into everything?
I think there's a lot of public that would only listen to songs if there were no accompanying videos. But on the other hand, we have this kind of social media like Instagram and stuff like that. I think TikTok nowadays, where people just scroll around and they give maybe 1 millisecond of attention to what they see, And if it's not something that really captures like all of their senses, they're going to swipe around and swipe away from your stuff soon, you know? So I think it's really important to connect with a video for sure, because it's, you know, multisensory stuff, and it captures the attention more.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been looking into, like, you know, the thing that was supposed to be really big was like VR.
Mm-hmm.
And VR seems to, like, the problem with VR is it's too expensive
Yeah.
to get a big audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've talked to guys that are into technology and are like really big on VR, but I'm like, I just come from a realistic point of view. It's like, well, how many people actually have the VR?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like VR is the next big thing, but it's like it doesn't have the installed base of an Xbox or a PlayStation main system.
Mm.
How many people actually have it? So if you're gonna put all your eggs in the VR, it's like, well, how many people actually have it? You know? And so it's kind of like, okay, like, it's cool to be on the cutting edge, but if the cutting edge isn't really, you know, doesn't have a big base, it's like the same kind of problem you have with selling CDs. You know, you're not gonna sell a lot of CDs in a world where people have Spotify playlists.
Mm.
You know, you have to know, like, where your audience actually is.
Yeah.
So do you do, like, analysis of, like, your audience and know where they are and try to tailor things to where they are? Do you work with, like, marketing people or anything, or you kind of just what's your strategy on that? Because that's part of what's going on today. It's like some people having to drive into that kind of data.
To be honest, I'm you know, not really into that kind of data. I know it's really important, and it's a fault on my side to not, you know, take my time to care much about that.
Well, it's kind of like what your agent does, or your booster.
Yeah. I leave that to my label.
Yeah, your label is the one supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Some people, like, when they go indie, they try to take that on, but it's like there's a lot of stuff with that, you know, marketing, that, you know, guys are marketers like the way guys are engineers.
Yeah, you know? and you know, the internet is flooded of, you know, people and new material and everything. And you know, if you want to get promoted, you really have to, I think, have someone do that for you, you know, because otherwise it would be so taxing on your schedule.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's what, like, what you do is you got to get a way to get somebody to pretty much, you know, be a promotional guru for you. And that's where the agents and the booking people, and you know, like, you got to have a booker, you got to have an agent, you got to have distribution network, you have to have all these things. You know, if you want to really get in the game.
Yeah.
Or you got to, like, you know, play the gamble that you're going to get a big YouTube video and suddenly have that audience drive into the rest of your stuff. But you never know, because things can happen. You just keep. But I think all musicians do the work because it's not work. It's like they love what they do. Most musicians I talk to, they do it whether they're making, you know, money or not. They do the art, and then because they do the art, they find opportunities. You know, because they're so passionate about their art that people kind of pick up on that, and then you find ways to get it out there.
Yeah.
So that's interesting that you're still working hard, and you're gonna have a new release in September timeframe. And we love to have artists come on the show multiple times. So if you have something, you know, that you want to push in September, if you want to get back on a podcast, we can bring you back on.
I thank you very much for that, and it would be a big pleasure for me.
That's great. We love talking to you, Løben, and we're going to push this out within the next hour. It will be on 11 platforms, including Spotify and Apple and Google, Radio Public, Overcast, all the big podcast platforms. And we also cross promote on Instagram with our Spotify version of the podcast. We can set up a highlight on Instagram that will go directly to the Spotify version of the show. And so we'll push that out. You can do that yourself as well.
Great.
But we will push that out on our social media within the hour. So Løben, we thank you for being on the show. Everybody go out and check out Løben on all streaming services, including Spotify, who's our main sponsor. But you can get it everywhere. And check it out. And we'll have all the hyperlinks on this episode so people can check out your Spotify and the other links that we found for you. We'll include your Instagram as well.
Thank you very much for your opportunity. It was a real pleasure, and for the nice chat. It was very good time. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Goodbye.
Bye.